Hey everybody, we have come to the end of our hunt for the day the data died. The initial manipulation of the COVID-19 data has been relayed by Johns Hopkins University and used by media all over the world. Was manipulated, and we knew it because it was based on CDC data. You can check that out in our previous videos. But we have narrowed down and isolated the exact day and the exact time that the data was altered, and by who? Pun intended. It was the WHO. Johns Hopkins University has been displaying manipulated data since January 26. We're just going to let that sink in right there. Go check out this video, guys. But that's not the purpose of today's video. Since we found this date and time, this hunt has now ended. So we're shifting gears. We have a new hunt, and we're going to start with Lilly Singh, myth-busting coronavirus with Dr. Fauci. Give back, hashtag with me. 6 million views, Lilly Singh. Let's see what you told your 14.9 million subscribers was a fact. And let's see if it's still a fact. Because I searched your channel and your Twitter, and you haven't put out any updates, Lilly Singh. That doesn't seem very honest. Let's find out how honest you are.
What up everyone, it's your girl Lily, and things are crazy right now, am I right? If you're anything like me, you're part of 17 different group chats where everyone is sending screenshots and tweets and articles, and I'm gonna be real, it's causing a lot of anxiety, fear, and confusion. I mean, let's be real, right now everyone has a friend who's a doctor or works for the government. And I think in times like this where things are already so stressful, misinformation just makes things way worse. So
For the record, I'm not a doctor, and I do not work for the US government.
my goal for today for this video is to debunk some of the myths associated with coronavirus and get to the facts. I'm gonna go directly to the source.
I am, however, an SEO genius, hence the hashtag debunkthisfauci, which we appreciate you guys put on every single post related to anything COVID-19 misinformation. Tag it, hashtag debunkthisfauci. Okay, let's continue.
No, not me. I've been misspelling corona for the past 2 weeks, literally. Like my friends had to correct me. Apparently it's C-O-R and not C-A-R. I had the privilege of speaking with Dr. Fauci, who is one of the lead people here in the US dealing with coronavirus and is part of the task force and definitely knows his facts. But before we get into that, as you may or may not know, I am a proud UNICEF Global Goodwill Ambassador. So I've decided to partner with YouTube Giving to try to help UNICEF's COVID Relief Fund. It's very simple. You can click donate to donate directly right here on this video. I'm trying to raise $10,000. That money will go towards helping youth around the world that are dealing with this pandemic. So if you can, please give, please donate. It is a great cause and people need it right now. And bonus, YouTube is going to match every dollar up to $10,000. So give and let's get this doubled. Wait, hold on, stop the video. I had to insert this clip because I just received a word that YouTube is stepping up and they will be donating $250,000 to coronavirus relief by UNICEF. Thank you so much, YouTube, for taking this massive step. I love you so much.
Folks, that's generally what we call a paid social influencer, for the record.
But thank you on behalf of not only UNICEF and the world, but me, because this means so much to me. You always are just the best, Team Super. Now it's your turn to step up. Let's do this. Okay, back to the video. Now, without further ado, let's hang out and discover the facts. No printer with Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're probably extremely busy right now, but a lot of people, including me, are being bombarded with information regarding COVID-19. And I'm gonna be real with you, I don't know what's true or what's false, so I thought I would use your help to kind of debunk some myths and get to the facts. Can you help me with that?
I'll try my best, yes.
Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I'm gonna tell you everything I've heard from the internet, my group chats, Twitter, and I would love to get the facts. I'm warning you, some of these might sound silly to you, but they're actually a cause of confusion for me and my friends, so this is my way of saying they might sound stupid.
No, it's real life.
Virus 101, immunology for dummies right now. So to dive right in, I have one friend who says that coronavirus is the most dangerous virus we've seen. I have another friend who says the seasonal flu is worse. And both of these friends have friends that are doctors. So I wanted to ask, is this just the seasonal flu?
No. So the direct answer to the question, it's not seasonal flu. It transmits much more rapidly, and it has one characteristic that unfortunately dramatically distinguishes it from the seasonal flu. The mortality of the seasonal flu that you and I experience every season is about 0.1%. The mortality of this is about 1%, which means it's 10 times more lethal. In seasonal flu, we have never seen hospital rooms.
Is that true? We now know as of 4/20/2020 at least, and I want everybody to know that I have tried to pick news sources from a variety of different places. Okay, so you're going to see some interesting news here in just a second. So here we go. The mortality rate has now dropped a lot, closer to 0.1 or 0.2%. Keep going.
Hospital intensive care units overrun, where you run out of beds and you run out of ventilators. We've seen that all over the world. We're seeing it in Europe. We're seeing it in New York City. This is not the seasonal flu.
Gonna have to beg to differ with you, Dr. Fauci. According to the CDC, put out roughly a week ago, according to the latest CDC COVID View report, increases in hospitalization rates for COVID-19, which are cumulative, have started to level off. The hospitalization rate is highest among adults 65 and older, and similar to what has been seen during a comparable time period during a recent high-severity flu season. So it's a lot like the flu.
So that one is nailed, definitely.
Got it. And in terms of how it's...
So since that was nailed definitely, Lilly Singh, and we now know that that information is inaccurate, have you put out another video clarifying to the 6.2 million people that saw this one that the information has changed? Have you done anything to change the minds of these people? Because you're doing it right now, but have you updated them with new information, Lilly Singh? You have a moral responsibility to do that after putting out this video. Maybe you haven't done it because you haven't gotten paid for it yet?
Spreads. I've been hearing a lot of conflicting ideas here. Is the virus airborne? And then also, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because airborne means different things to different people. The standard way of a respiratory virus spreading is by droplet, big droplet. And if I cough, the droplet goes a few feet and then just goes down. That's the reason why we say stay 6 feet from each other. When something is airborne, that's misleading. It's what's really called aerosol, which means that when the virus comes out of your respiratory tree, it's in a droplet that's so small that it doesn't just drop to the ground. It can hang around for a period of time, several minutes, usually more than that. It isn't like, 5 hours. I mean, measles can do it for 2 hours, but measles is the worst of that, and this is not like measles. So there probably is a small degree of aerosol, but mostly it's droplet. But the other thing that people don't pay attention to when they're focusing on airborne versus droplet is your hands and what you touch. People continually touch their nose and their mouth. They shake hands with people. They grab a doorknob. That's also the way it's transmitted. So that's the reason why we say right now, given what we're going through and maybe forever, nobody should be shaking hands.
You should never, ever, ever shake hands with anybody ever again. No fist bumps, no nothing, folks. microbiologists everywhere right now are thinking to themselves, well, how else will we get those beneficial microbes that we need to survive?
And I mean that. No one should be shaking hands.
So on that note, how long can the virus live on items? Because I have one friend who goes to the grocery store, gets his essentials, then he will, Lysol wipe down everything, all of his apples and all of his stuff. Is that the right thing to do? Can the virus live on a bag of chips?
Well, viruses can live, this virus particularly, because we've looked specifically, can live on inanimate objects for variable periods of time. It does better on hard surfaces like stainless steel, certain types of plastic. It does less well on cloth and corrugated things, but it can live on a surface for several hours, up to even a day or two. So you don't want to be completely crazy about wiping everything down every minute of the day, but you should use precautions, particularly about wiping down doorknobs and things that are frequently touched, like when you give somebody a credit card.
I just want to stop right here and point out, as this goes on, you're going to see him holding a cough suppressant drop in his hand, Ricola. And almost all of his videos, you'll see him holding one. It's a little thing he does. But your expert here, this guy telling you not to shake hands, in this video alone has touched at least 4 different objects. And he's going to open that cough drop with unwashed hands, touch the cough drop, put it right in his mouth. Okay, just in all of his videos, he's got one in his mouth. You can hear it, or you can see him playing with a wrapper. All of them, every single video I've ever seen with this guy. I just now realized it. Pay attention, watch.
Come back, get a wipe and just wipe off the credit card. Common sense things. If you overdo it, you'll paralyze yourself.
Right. Okay, is it true, because I've read this a lot, is it true that the virus struggles to live in hot climates?
Most viruses that are respiratory viruses do much better in cold, dry weather than in warm, moist weather. For that reason, the very classical seasonal viruses like influenza, we're getting to the end of our influenza season now, or even coronaviruses that are the common benign coronaviruses, tend to go away in the summer and come back. That is true. The thing we don't know is whether this particular virus is also going to do that.
So it hasn't been proven yet?
It hasn't been proven because we haven't gotten into the season yet. So what we hope, and this is hope, and I think it's hope based on some reasonable assumptions, that as we mitigate against it, as we do the physical separation that you're doing and that I'm doing right now, combined with the onset of the summer season in the Northern Hemisphere, that we are going to see a diminution of it.
And in terms of precautions, on that note,
Yeah, on that note, check our other videos about nail in the coffin, the home isolation nail in the coffin, where we go into detail about how sunlight kills the virus. I'm going to put the link to the NBACC study on how UV light affects the virus and its half-life, as well as heat and humidity in the description. So make sure you guys check that out.
how well do face masks actually work? Because some people are using them for fashion. They look cool. I'm seeing a lot of Instagram selfies with face masks, but do they actually work to protect you?
Well, face masks are, I'll get to your answer in a second. I'm not going to evade this. The primary purpose of a face mask is to protect a healthcare worker when he or she is taking care of somebody that's sick. The secondary use is to get someone who's sick to put it on themselves to prevent them from infecting somebody else. Other people who want to protect against getting infected in society, other people who want to protect against getting infected in society, they can use face masks. The reason we didn't recommend it early on is we didn't want the supply of face masks to be used for people who didn't really need it when the physicians and the nurses and the healthcare providers who needed it weren't getting it. In a perfect world, if you have enough face masks, there's nothing wrong with wearing a face mask. Is it 100% protective? No way. What is it? Estimate maybe 50% or so, and that's merely an estimate.
The relevant known physics and biology which I review are such that masks and respirators should not work. It would be a paradox if masks and respirators worked, given what we know about viral respiratory diseases. The main transmission path is long residence time aerosol particles, which are too fine to be blocked, and the minimum effective dose is smaller than 1 aerosol particle. He just told you how effective with a guess that it might be. I just showed you that it's not effective. And keep in mind that this sizing here matches the report from the Department of Homeland Security, which tells you that the aerosolized virus has been detected in COVID-19 patient rooms, not your grocery store, patient rooms, with particle sizes within the human respirable range. Within the range. But then they go on to tell you that extensive contamination of patient rooms indicates the potential for airborne transmission, though to date, infectious virus has not been isolated from aerosol samples because the virus cannot live that long in an aerosol environment. And this is what he's explaining.
There's some degree of protection, but it isn't a completely protective against the transmission.
Right, and I know there's a type of face mask called the N95. I don't know any specifics around it, but I know that's the one that's supposed to be the legitimate one that healthcare workers are supposed to be using. But I did read an article saying that some hospitals in the USA are using the same mask for a week because of shortage of masks. Do those masks expire? Are you supposed to wear for X amount of hours?
The concern is not the expiration over a week. The concern is if you wear a mask and then someone coughs and you have droplets and virus there, that if you keep wearing it the next day, the virus might still be there and you can infect yourself. So it's
what we have been trying to tell everybody for a long, long time. Quit wearing the masks, because if you are wearing the mask to protect yourself from the outside environment and you get a droplet on that mask, like all of the science tells you, you can now infect yourself because it allows so much pass-through. So the mask is not keeping you safe. In fact, it's causing you to rebreathe your own CO2 over and over. It's hurting your health. It's not helping you. Okay, the science is very clear. The expert is very clear. It can easily lead to more infections, especially when you guys are taking those masks home with you and not properly disposing of them, and you're wearing them over and over and over again. You're not properly cleaning them, and you leave them in your home where they get picked up and touched everywhere. That's why home isolation cluster infections are increasing, and we've already showed you that data too. Find our video. Let's keep going.
It's less that the mask physically expires than it is you're reusing a contaminated mask. That's the problem.
So generally you should, if you're a healthcare worker, you should be switching it out, but there's a...
And on the flip side of that, folks, if you have what's considered a light infection of COVID-19, by constantly breathing it out and back in, you are solidifying its existence in your upper respiratory tract.
A shortage of supply.
Exactly, and that's where you got to balance the risk with the benefit.
So the number one panic text I keep receiving, and I'm sure everyone at home can relate, I've gotten so many texts about this, is just about the accuracy of cases. And now this is not to incite fear into anyone, it's honestly just to prepare and give accurate information, but a lot of people say that we don't know the actual number of cases in the US, and it's way worse than we're being told. Can you speak to this a little, about the numbers and the accuracy?
Okay, so the fact is, in the United States, since we are just in the beginning of this ramping up of testing, we don't know the denominator of the number of cases. We're rapidly learning it more and more, because what you do is you do sentinel testing. You get people who come in for flu-like symptoms that may or may not have coronavirus, and you test them. And the latest number, you find out about 10-14% of them have coronavirus, which means that 86% to 90% don't have coronavirus. But the issue is that I think the point that you're getting to, which is important, is that there are a number of people out there who are without symptoms. They feel well, but they're infected. Those are the ones that you're concerned that they're going to inadvertently pass the infection on to someone else. What percentage of the totality of the coronavirus infection is asymptomatic? We don't know. We don't think it's a vast, large percentage.
Okay, is that true? Again, we now know, thanks to the LA County study and many other studies that have been done, that tests indicate the number of infections is 40 times higher than the number of confirmed cases, which would mean that the CFR exactly is much, much lower than what we originally thought it was. And again, we understand. I get it. People like this put out videos and they scare the hell out of you, and then they never put out a video updating any information to unscare the hell out of you. You are liable, Lilly Singh, for people with masks on at the home. I mean, I appreciate the semi-honesty here about the masks, but as I showed you, everybody knows masks don't work. Feel free to go here, check it out yourself. On and on and on and on. Masks do not work to stop respiratory viruses. Not one. Not one. No RCT study with verified outcome shows a benefit for HCW or community members in households to wearing a mask or respirator. There is no such study. There are no exceptions.
We think it's relatively small, but I say that with some trepidation because we haven't looked at it in an orderly way.
Well, I appreciate that very transparent answer. On that note, a more positive, like, is there any vaccines or cures that you know of? And I asked this because I saw on Instagram, I was scrolling through Instagram, and I saw that, this is what it said, Canada has found the cure. Now, I also have a lot of Canadian friends. I am a proud Canadian, so I don't know if we're just biased and trying to be proud, but is there a vaccine or cure for this virus?
God bless Canada, but they haven't found the cure, okay? So
we had one thing going for us. No, I'm kidding.
No, the situation is that we have vaccine, one and more coming online, that we started a vaccine trial a few weeks ago. I've been talking about this a lot. It's the fastest we've ever gone into human trials. Even that rocket speed, it's not going to be available for at least a year and a half. So there's no proven and effective vaccine, but we will have one if we get another cycle and we go through the next seasons. Number two, there are a lot of drugs out there that are being tested.
I'm going to stop right here real quick. Let's take a look at that statement from a different Fauci interview. You guys recognize this dude? Did I already? Yeah, here. Let's go ahead and give that a thumbs down.
So one of the questions that I've heard from a number of people is, doing the safety trials obviously is incredibly important because you want to make sure that you're not injecting people with something that could be harmful. But once you have that, why not push harder on rolling it out more aggressively? Even if you don't know exactly how effective it is, what's the public health rationale and thinking behind needing to prove that it's extremely effective before rolling out something that you know is safe?
You guys heard that, right? What's the rationale in proving something's effective as long as you can prove it's safe? These vaccines are a for-profit industry. They're not about efficacy. They're not about safety. You just heard this guy ask it. He has a legitimate financial interest in vaccines through the BioHub, which is what he was just talking about. Notice the data on the video. Notice the data on the video. Chan Zuckerberg have the BioHub, which are streamlining a bunch of off-brand medications, which is kind of what he's talking about here. Take a listen.
Okay, that's a good question. The initial safety study, Mark, is to see if I inject it in the arm, does it have some sort of idiosyncratic or bad reaction? There's another element to safety, and that is if you vaccinate someone and they make an antibody response and then they get exposed and infected, does the response that you induce actually enhance the infection and make it worse? And the only way you'll know that is if you do an extended study, not in a normal volunteer who has no risk of infection, but in people who are out there in a risk situation. This would not be the first time, if it happened, that a vaccine that looked good in initial safety actually made people worse. There was the history of the
For those of you in the back.
in initial safety actually made people worse. There was the history of the respiratory syncytial virus vaccine in children, which paradoxically made the children worse. One of the HIV.
For the record, making them worse in that case was either paralyzing them or killing them. That's his rendition of it made it worse. They died.
Vaccines that we tested several years ago, children worse. One of the HIV vaccines that we tested several years ago actually made individuals more likely to get infected. So you can't.
I don't know how much more you need to hear, folks. And listen to... Sorry.
Can't just go out there and give it unless you feel that in the field, when someone is getting infected and exposed, being vaccinated doesn't make them worse. That's why you got to do a trial.
Yeah, that's important to get out there. So with that context of these extended trial periods, even when you're doing heroic work to get these a vaccine candidate tested quickly, one of the strategies that I've heard that I'm personally most optimistic about, and that at our philanthropy, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, where we're trying to help out with, is seeing if there are ways to test already approved compounds and drugs and therapeutics, things that have already gone through that cycle and have been proven to be safe and effective for fighting some disease, to see whether any of those compounds or drugs could be effective for either preventing or treating the symptoms of this coronavirus.
AKA, can we take drugs already on the market, relabel them, repurpose them? Who cares if they're actually effective or not? He just said that. They've already been proven for safety, so let's make some bucks.
The only way you can tell that a drug really works is to do the kind of trial where you compare it to something. It's called a randomized controlled trial. We have a number of interventions that are currently being looked at in that auspices of a trial. There are a lot of claims that there are drugs out there that are approved for other things that are knockout drugs that work. That's anecdotal information based not on scientific evidence, but based on a lot of stories that this may work or not work. And that's where your friends are coming in and saying, oh, we heard there's a drug that really works. There is no definitively proven drug that is effective against this disease.
So what do you think needs to happen in order to run through that process? I mean, I'm talking to a lot of scientists now who basically all have hypotheses of compounds or things that they'd love to get tested. What would you like to see have happen there to prioritize which ones are the most optimistic, and what do you think about that strategy overall?
Well, it's a great question because it's exactly happening, and I like the strategy. So there are a number of...
Well, that was interesting.
Coming in and saying, oh, we heard there's a drug or not on scientific. That's anecdotal information based not on scientific evidence, but based on a lot of stories that this may work or not work. And that's where your friends are coming in and saying, oh, we heard there's a drug that really works. There is no definitively proven drug that is effective against this disease. Already approved drugs or drugs that have been developed but almost approved, not quite approved, that are now being looked at because of initial either in vitro or animal data work suggesting that they may be helpful. Give you some examples. There's a drug called remdesivir, which is a drug that was developed by Gilead as an antiviral. We tried it in Ebola. It didn't work as well as some of the other drugs, but it's there. What?
I'm just going to stop there and leave it as it is.
Or on that note, I also had, and this might have been one of my Indian undies that said this to me because it sounds like it, but vitamin C can ward off the virus, I've been told.
Well, you know, vitamin C is a good antioxidant. There's no proof it could ward off the virus, but there's no harm in taking vitamin C as long as you don't take ridiculously large doses. The same thing is true for vitamin D. You know, many people around in our society are vitamin D deficient. You get it naturally from sunlight. Often we don't get enough sunlight. There's no.
So home isolations would probably decrease the amount of sunlight and vitamin D people get, for the record, thus making them sicker.
Nothing wrong with also supplementing with vitamin D. Are they specifically going to help you with the virus? Maybe not, but it's one of those things that it's a healthy thing to do.
So
He didn't say, will it specifically help you with the virus? He didn't say maybe. He said maybe not.
same with turmeric and ginger. So I should tell my mom turmeric and ginger are not curing this virus.
Oh, you could tell her that your herbs are not curing the virus.
Okay, you hear that? The turmeric is not gonna help this one. Okay. I started a social good initiative called Girl Love. Clearly I'm wearing the sweater. It is aimed to empower women. So on behalf of that community.
Social initiative, social campaign.
I want to ask, because I've seen some things on the internet about this too. Does the virus affect men and women differently?
Maybe not differently, but certainly more men are getting infected and getting in trouble than women.
And why is that?
We don't know that. We absolutely don't know. I have to be, humble about this. I don't know yet. We're going to be studying it. It may be that men have more underlying conditions that lead them to get a more serious disease. It isn't that men get more infections than women. They get more seriously ill than women.
I also was part of an email chain I got that was being passed this information. It said that Advil makes the virus 10 times worse. Can you speak to that?
There is no evidence to indicate that any anti-inflammatory makes the virus worse. There are anecdotal stories about that, but I have not seen any convincing evidence that that's the case.
Okay, this is a tough question, but I'm sure you're gonna ask it a lot. I know we only have a couple minutes left here. Everyone keeps wondering when this is going to end. I've heard people say, oh, this is going to last a couple weeks more, months. Is there any way to tell when will our lives resume to normal state?
No, you can't predict it, but you can look at what's happened with this same epidemic in other countries. I mean, in China, it was about an 8 to 9 week before it went up and down. In Korea, it turned the corner in several weeks.
What you guys see him doing with his finger there is he's drawing the bell curve. A lot of people don't know where the bell curve comes from, and I suggest you read up on Farr's law of epidemics. That's where that bell curve comes from. Farr's law of epidemics tells you that if you have a bell curve spike, and you do something to mitigate those effects of that bell curve, what you unintendedly do is flatten it and cause it to extend with a bunch of ripples, which is what you're seeing after the fact.
We are right now, as a country, have multiple epidemics going on because we're a big country. New York is different from Florida, is different from Washington. As a country, it's probably going to be several weeks before we see a turnaround.
Keep in mind, he said we had multiple epidemics going on at the same time, one of which was our average flu season. Pneumonia, flu, these things come every year.
Weeks.
Last question for you. On a lighter note, you've taught me a lot of things here. Since we're making a YouTube video and the goal is to get clicks, get people the right information, my last question for you is, have you ever posed for a YouTube thumbnail?
No.
Okay, would you like to do that with me to get people? So you can do I don't know if there's an infamous pose you have at the internet.
Probably involves a Ricola.
Take care. Take care. And there you have it, the facts. That was so helpful for me. I hope it was for you, because I'm not gonna lie, a lot of that stuff I thought was true was false, and a lot of the stuff I thought was definitely false turns out to be true. So I do think right now it's really important to unite and be together, express togetherness. And one of the best ways to do that is to really evaluate where we're getting our information from, and to not be part of spreading misinformation, because it is causing a lot of anxiety and fear. And so we should definitely be informed and be aware so we can prepare, but let's just make sure we're sticking to the facts. I hope.
Well, Lilly Singh, we would like to challenge you to do a new video with some of the new information that we just put out in front of you that's now readily available. Speaking of which, readily available, they were talking about medicines that do and do not work. If you haven't seen this, and again, I told you I was going to be sharing stuff from a variety of news sources. A study from France, 1,061 patients treated with hydroxychloroquine. Great work out of this guy. You guys should definitely check this out. Now, again, you're talking about Fauci, and you see where he's talking about remdesivir. Okay? But Professor Didier Raoult releases the results of a new hydroxychloroquine treatment study on 1,061 patients. The results? No cardiac toxicity was observed. A good clinical outcome in I can't talk right now. Virological cure was obtained in 973 patients with 10 days, 91.7%. That's pretty significant, especially considering it dropped the mortality rate 0.5% in elderly patients. I suggest people look into this. So, Lilly Singh, we have now proven that a lot of the information that you call facts and pushed out to 6.2 million people are no longer facts. So your video needs to be updated. Are you going to update it, Lilly Singh? We're going to find out. We'll be seeing you soon, Lilly.